the Epic of Gilgamesh, the oldest story ever written. Welcome to Cerebro Ethos, where ancient wisdom is unveiled. Over 4,000 years ago, long before the Bible, long before Homer's Iliad and Odyssey, humanity wrote its very first great tale. It was a story of kings and gods, friendship and loss, quest for immortality and the meaning of life itself. That story is the Epic of Gilgamesh, the oldest story ever written. Today, we journey back to the cradle of civilization, Mesopotamia, to explore this timeless epic. Chapter 1, Uruk, the Great City. Uruk was no ordinary settlement. It was one of the very first true cities in human history, thriving around 3000 BCE in the fertile land between the Tigris and Euphrates. Massive mud brick walls surrounded it, stretching for miles, fortifications so impressive that they were later described as the work of gods themselves. Inside, wide streets connected marketplaces filled with traders, artisans, and farmers. Ziggurats, towering temples of baked clay, rose above the skyline, linking heaven and earth. At its peak, Uruk may have been home to 50,000 people, a staggering number for its time. It was a hub of writing, trade, religion, and architecture. To live in Uruk was to witness the very dawn of urban civilization. At the heart of it all was Gilgamesh. His strength was legendary, his beauty divine, his presence commanding. Yet despite the glory of his city, the people of Uruk suffered under his rule. The tablets tell us he worked his citizens to exhaustion, took liberties with women, and ignored the cries of his people. Gilgamesh had built the greatest city of his age, but what is a city if its ruler is cruel? The citizens prayed for justice, and in response, the gods did not destroy Uruk, nor did they strike Gilgamesh down. Instead, they devised a test, a rival who could match his strength and perhaps humble his heart. This is where the true story of the Epic of Gilgamesh begins. Chapter 2, Enkidu the Wild Man. To answer the cries of Uruk's people, the gods shaped Enkidu from the clay of the wilderness. He was raw, untamed, half man, half beast. His hair flowed wild, his body was covered in shaggy hair, and his instincts belonged to the wild. Enkidu roamed freely with animals, drank at the watering holes beside gazelles, and tore apart hunters' traps to free the beasts. He lived as nature's child, pure and uncorrupted by the city. But his presence soon threatened the balance. Hunters complained that their game scattered when Enkidu was near. One hunter, desperate and afraid, sought advice. The solution was not sword or spear, but civilization itself. A temple priestess, Shamhat, was sent to meet Enkidu. Her beauty, grace, and human warmth lured him from the wilderness. Through her touch and her words, Enkidu learned tenderness, companionship, and the ways of humanity. The animals that once ran beside him now fled, for he no longer belonged fully to their world. He ate bread, drank beer, and clothed himself, symbols of his transformation. Enkidu, the wild man, had become something greater, fully human. But with this transformation came purpose. He heard of Gilgamesh, the arrogant king of Uruk who oppressed his people. And so, with his new strength and humanity, Enkidu set out to confront the mighty ruler. This meeting would not only change Uruk. It would change the course of human storytelling forever. Chapter 3, Friendship Forged. Enkidu entered Uruk with fire in his heart. The people whispered, "At last, a rival to challenge our king." Gilgamesh, proud and unyielding, welcomed no equals. When the two men met, their clash shook the very streets of Uruk. They wrestled with such force that walls trembled and dust filled the air. Neither yielded. Strength met strength, pride met pride. But then, something remarkable happened. As their eyes locked, respect began to replace rage. In Enkidu, Gilgamesh found not an enemy, but an equal. And in Gilgamesh, Enkidu found not a tyrant, but a brother. Their battle ended not with blood, but with laughter. From that moment on, they were inseparable. Together, they roamed Uruk as comrades. They shared feasts, dreams, and plans for adventures that stretched beyond the city's gates. The people rejoiced, for the wild man had tamed the king, and the king had given purpose to the wild man. Yet their friendship was not meant to be simple. The gods who had brought them together had also set the stage for a destiny filled with trials, victories, and tragedy. Gilgamesh and Enkidu, two men forged by fate, were about to embark on a journey that would test the limits of human courage and lay the foundation for the oldest epic ever written. Chapter 4, Quest for Glory. With their bonds sealed in friendship, Gilgamesh and Enkidu longed for a challenge worthy of their strength. Gilgamesh's eyes turned toward the distant cedar forest, a place said to be guarded by a monstrous being, Humbaba, servant of the god Enlil. The cedar forest was no ordinary woodland. It was sacred, a divine realm where mortals dared not tread. But Gilgamesh sought glory, a name that would echo through eternity. And Enkidu, once a creature of the wild, feared the forest's power, yet he could not abandon his brother. Together, they prepared for the journey. They armed themselves with mighty axes and swords forged for kings. The elders of Uruk warned them, "Do not anger the gods, Humbaba is death itself." But Gilgamesh replied, "If I fall, I will at least have carved my name into history. Let all men know Gilgamesh dared." Days turned into nights as they traveled. At last they reached the towering cedars, their scent heavy in the air, their shadows stretching like giants. Then came the roar, deep, thunderous, shaking the ground. Humbaba appeared. His face was said to change with each moment, terrifying to behold. He breathed fire, his voice like the storm. The battle was fierce. Gilgamesh and Enkidu fought side by side, blades striking, hearts racing. But even together they faltered, until Gilgamesh prayed to the sun god Shamash for aid. The god answered. Winds from every direction pinned Humbaba, leaving him vulnerable. The heroes struck him down. But Humbaba pleaded for mercy. Enkidu, hardened by fate, urged Gilgamesh not to relent. "Do not spare him. If he lives, he will rise again." With one final blow, they slew the guardian of the cedar forest. They cut down the sacred trees, sending their wood back to Uruk to build temples and palaces. Yet in their triumph, they had defied the gods. And the gods do not forget. This victory would bring them glory, but it would also sow the seeds of sorrow yet to come. Chapter 5, The Death of Enkidu. The gods had watched Gilgamesh and Enkidu's triumphs with unease. They had slain Humbaba, guardian of the cedar forest. They had killed the bull of heaven, sent by the goddess Ishtar in anger. The balance of the world had been broken. A council of the gods was called. Someone had to pay the price. And so the gods chose Enkidu. A mysterious sickness fell upon him. At first he could still rise, still speak, but each day his strength withered. His once mighty frame, able to run with lions and wrestle kings, now weakened like a reed in the wind. Enkidu cursed the day he was tamed, cursed the hunter who first spotted him, cursed even the temple priestess who had brought him into civilization. But soon he found peace and acceptance, realizing he had lived with purpose and, above all, had found brotherhood in Gilgamesh. For 12 long days he suffered. Gilgamesh remained at his side, helpless, terrified. This was not a foe he could strike down, not a wall he could conquer, not a river he could cross. This was death. When at last Enkidu breathed his final breath, silence fell. The mighty warrior was gone. Gilgamesh threw himself upon his friend's body. He wept like a child, tore his robes, and covered himself with dust and ashes. The king who had once seemed immortal now faced a truth too heavy to bear. If Enkidu, born of the gods, strong as the wild, could fall to death, then Gilgamesh, too, was only a man. And so grief turned to fear. Fear of death. Fear of the shadowed underworld Enkidu had described in his visions. A land of dust, silence, and forgotten names. This moment broke Gilgamesh, but it also began his greatest journey. A quest not for glory, nor for conquest, but for something deeper. The secret of life and the hope of immortality. Chapter 6, Quest for Immortality. Haunted by Enkidu's death, Gilgamesh could no longer find peace within the walls of Uruk. His palace, his people, his crown, all seemed worthless compared to the shadow of mortality. Determined to escape death itself, he set out on a perilous journey. He crossed scorching deserts, rivers that threatened to sweep him away, and mountains whose peaks touched the heavens. Each step carried him farther from home and closer to the unknown. His goal was Utnapishtim, an ancient man said to have survived the Great Flood. Granted eternal life by the gods, Utnapishtim was the only mortal to escape death. But the road to immortality was barred by terrifying beings. At the gates of the sun, where the world of men meets the realm of the gods, Gilgamesh encountered the scorpion men, creatures of immense power whose glance could pierce the soul. They warned him, beyond the mountain lay only darkness and despair. Few mortals had ever passed through alive. Yet Gilgamesh pressed on. His fear was nothing compared to his longing for life everlasting. Through 12 leagues of darkness, Gilgamesh ran, until at last he emerged into a wondrous garden where trees bore jewels instead of fruit. From there he journeyed farther still, to the waters of death, where no living being could set foot. With the help of a ferryman, Gilgamesh crossed the silent waters until he stood before the immortal Utnapishtim. Gilgamesh begged for the secret of eternal life, but Utnapishtim spoke a bitter truth. Death is the fate of all mortals. No king, no warrior, no man can escape it. Yet he revealed a secret. At the bottom of the sea lay a plant, a thorny herb said to restore youth to the old and weary. Hope surged within Gilgamesh's heart. At last, he believed he had found the key to life unending. But destiny still had one final lesson in store. Chapter 7, The Bitter Truth. At last, Gilgamesh had done the impossible. From the depths of the sea, he pulled forth the plant of youth, thorny, glowing, and sacred. He believed his quest was over. Immortality was now within his grasp. But fate, as it often does, had other plans. On his long journey back to Uruk, Gilgamesh stopped to rest by a quiet pool of water. Exhausted, he laid the precious plant beside him. From the shadows, a serpent appeared. Drawn by the scent of the sacred herb, it crept forward, swift and silent. Before Gilgamesh could act, the creature seized the plant, devoured it whole, and slithered away. As the serpent shed its skin, reborn in strength and youth, Gilgamesh realized the cruel irony. The gift of renewal had slipped from his hands, given instead to another creature of the earth. His hope turned to despair. The plant was gone. The dream of immortality shattered. With nothing left, Gilgamesh returned to Uruk. Empty-handed, yet forever changed, he looked upon the towering walls of his city, walls built by his own hands, enduring long after the lives of men. And in that moment, he understood. Immortality was never meant for man. Not in flesh, not in body, but in legacy, in what we create, in what we leave behind. Chapter 8, The Lesson of Uruk. After all his struggles, through triumphs and failures, joy and heartbreak, Gilgamesh returned home to Uruk. He had not found eternal life. The gods had denied him that gift. But as he stood before the towering walls of his city, he saw what he had overlooked all along. These walls, built by human hands, crafted with skill and vision, would endure long after his mortal body was gone. They were more than stone. They were his legacy, a testament to what humanity could achieve together. And in his people, thriving, living, carrying on, he saw the truth. Immortality does not lie in living forever. It lies in the mark we leave behind, in the love we share, the friendships we forge, and the creations that outlast us. Through friendship with Enkidu, he learned compassion. Through grief, he discovered humility. Through loss, he found wisdom. The tyrant who once oppressed his people had transformed. No longer feared as a cruel ruler, Gilgamesh became remembered as a wise king. The Epic of Gilgamesh endures not because of a king's strength, but because of his journey. A journey that reflects our own struggles with love, loss, mortality, and meaning. And so, thousands of years later, his voice still echoes. Not as a man who conquered death, but as a man who embraced life. Chapter 9, The First Story Ever Told. Long before paper, long before books, the Epic of Gilgamesh was etched into clay tablets with wedge-shaped marks known as cuneiform. Each stroke was deliberate, pressed by the hands of scribes who preserved the voice of a king, a friend, and a people. Over thousands of years, many tablets were lost, broken, or buried beneath the sands of time. Yet enough survived for us to piece together this story, the oldest surviving tale of humanity. And what does this ancient story tell us? That human beings, even at the dawn of civilization, wrestled with the same questions we ask today. What does it mean to live well? Why must we die? How do we face grief, and what remains of us when we're gone? Though written thousands of years ago, the Epic of Gilgamesh is not just a relic. It is a mirror, a reminder that across time and culture, across empires and centuries, we are bound by the same human struggles. It is the first story ever told, and in its survival, it shows us the power of storytelling itself. Stories endure. They carry our fears, our dreams, and our wisdom forward into the future. The Epic of Gilgamesh is not just the tale of a king. It is the tale of us all. A voice from the ancient world, still speaking, still reminding us that to be human is to seek meaning, to create, and to remember. So what do we learn from Gilgamesh? That all humans must face mortality. That power and glory fade, but wisdom and legacy endure. And that the oldest story ever written is not about gods or kings, but about what it means to be human. If you enjoyed this journey into the world's first epic, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more ancient stories brought to life. What do you think Gilgamesh truly discovered on his journey? Let us know in the comments. Because history is more than dates and ruins. It's the echo of humanity, carried forward through stories. And together we'll keep those stories alive.